Kaelan Dorr served as chief marketing officer for President Trump's 2020 re-election campaign, also worked in the Treasury and White House. He's joining me now on the Scott Sands Show. Kaelan, great to have you back on.
Scott, I hope you're having a wonderful week, my friend. You're wrapping it up strong. A Thursday Eve. You know you're having a good day because you're not Kamala Harris.
I was about to say, I'm having a better week than Kamala Harris seems to be having. Two tremendous missed opportunities for her in the media this week, I think. I think she missed the boat on appearing with Charlemagne the God on our iHeartRadio networks. And last night with Bret Baier turned out to be a disaster and another missed opportunity for her.
Well, 100%. And you didn't even bring up yet another big missed opportunity for her. If you're the Kamala campaign, she's not going to the Al Smith dinner this week too. It's the first time a presidential candidate has snubbed the dinner, the charity dinner, since 1984. So she's clearly not interested in making any moves that might move the needle. And this is what I've been saying to people for weeks now: is that she's almost out of moves right now. If you're the Trump campaign, you feel pretty good. You feel pretty comfortable. You're trying to make sure that, you're negating any points she puts on the scoreboard. And rather than moving the ball down the field, she's getting sacked for her safety every time she does anything. The Charlemagne the God appearance has been widely panned, especially on YouTube, where the comments are just terrible for her. The likes are terrible for her. And then don't even get me started on this Bret Baier interview that her aides had to cut short 20 minutes in. I mean, dude, if you are, think about it this way, and this is something I don't think enough people are really thinking this problem through this way. If you were going for a promotion and you performed this well or this way in your interviews, you would be laughed out of the room. And so I collectively think we're going to end up laughing her out of politics here in November. But I mean, my goodness, man, it's been great for content, and it's been great for pundits like ourselves because she's given us so much fodder.
Well, I kind of want to go through these separate events one at a time. First of all, the snub of the Al Smith dinner tonight is unusual because she's not going to be asked any questions. She's not going to have to talk about policy. She would get a chance to demonstrate a personality trait that maybe we have not seen yet, and it's given the entire stage to Donald Trump. I don't know how many people actually watch or really care, but it says a lot for her not to even show up.
Right, and she's sending a message loud and clear to Catholics that is, she doesn't want you to be a part of her coalition. And I'll walk through a couple of things that I think are really important to keep in mind. She's repeatedly attacked the Knights of Columbus. It's the largest Catholic fraternal organization. There's 2 million members. They raise $1.5 billion in charity, and she's gone after them several times. She led a bigoted campaign against the Catholic nominee to the U.S. District Court in Nebraska. She said her faith was a disqualifying factor. She's gone after shutting down, I'm not even kidding, Catholic organizations like Little Sisters of the Poor because they refuse to conform. They don't conform to her gender identity agenda. She supported the Equality Act, which forces religious institutions, including churches, to compromise on their religious beliefs because she wants them to go out there and perform abortions. She shut down Catholic hospitals as Attorney General. So really the subtext here is she hates Catholics. And that's just like an insane thing to think that you're going to win an election alienating such a large base. There's a poll that came out just recently. 50% of Catholic voters side with Trump, 45 with Kamala, and I think she's going to bleed support after today.
The interesting thing about that, too, is that she's serving with a Catholic president, and it's still interesting to look at those numbers and see 45%, almost half of America, supports Kamala Harris despite her and Joe Biden's stance on abortion.
Right, and her line is that you don't have to compromise your faith to believe in those things. I think that is just a completely and totally unhinged and insane thing to say. To think that the termination of a life in that way it doesn't need to be taken. You don't need to take your faith into consideration making that huge decision. Is just bonkers, man. I mean, I'm having my first kid in December. We're having a baby daughter December 19th. And brother, man, going through this process, I don't know how you can look at this and not think think that any of this process has anything to do with anything but God, but your religion, but your faith. And it just, again, signals that they're not interested in the votes of anybody who is, faith-oriented.
And demonstrating your prowess as a political operative, family planning to have the baby after the election. Well done, Kaelan.
Yeah, we didn't necessarily plan it that way, but we're blessed either way. What's great is my wife just walked in the room. I'm doing this interview in my office. My wife walks into the room and gives me a big look, and the dog is barking at that answer too. She don't like that one.
Kaelan Dorr, former chief marketing officer for Donald Trump's 2020 re-election campaign, here on the Scott Sand Show. Now let's go to the Charlemagne the God appearance. And Charlemagne worked for the same company I do, iHeartMedia. I think Charlemagne is a talented personality. I think he's a terrific interviewer, and he completely missed the opportunity for spending an hour with Kamala Harris the other day. And even on that show, she could have reached out to address her diminishing support among black voters by talking about the things that I believe everybody really cares about, and that's the economy, the high cost of goods, inflation under her and Joe Biden. And instead, and this is partly because of the question she was asked by Charlemagne, but instead talked about reparations and things that I think black voters that are already going to vote for her care about, but didn't really address and go after and encourage independent black voters to select her. And at the same time, she rolled out this opportunity agenda for black men, which was pretty damn condescending in my opinion. And then the next day had to walk it back and say, no, it's going to be open to everybody.
Yeah, right. No, it's an agenda open to everybody, but for black men, it makes no sense. And the reparations thing is pretty damning, because if you look at it, I think our national debt, and I could be wrong, but our national debt's at around what? $36 trillion
36,
in a reparations plan.
Yeah, it's going up by the second. So yeah, let's just say 36, 37 trillion.
Yeah. What's a casual trillion between friends, right? I mean, nothing if you're Kamala Harris, because this reparations plan will cost $12 trillion. That's like a third of the deficit as of the day that she planned it. I mean, it is insane to me that she thinks that proposing these wildly unpopular policies, punishing people or punishing everybody on the basis of some people's race, it doesn't make any sense. It's not popular. And honestly, like you use the word condescending, I think that hits the nail on the head. I mean, people, regardless of your race or gender or whatever, other qualifying factors you want to slap on it, they don't want to be handed everything, or at least they shouldn't want to be handed everything.
Yeah,
people just want
free stuff.
She's onto something.
Free stuff and legalized drugs. What are you saying about the people you're talking to?
Right, and I think she's onto something. Yes, the phrase, the buzzword, opportunity economy, that is awesome, but they're not doing that with any of these policies. They're doing, socialist price controls. They're, capping capital gains, unrealized capital gains on your businesses. Whereas the real opportunity economy is what we saw under President Trump, because his entire administration was geared towards providing tangible quality of life improvements for you and your family so that you could go out and live your version of the American dream, not whatever it is Kamala Harris thinks the American dream is for you, whether that's smoking weed and firing off Glocks all day, or I don't even know. I don't even know what she thinks the American dream is anymore, because she's admitted herself that it's dead. So what is she even talking about?
Well, she was born in a middle class family, in Kaelan. So we do know that. Kaelan Dorr on the Scott Sand Show. Let's talk about the missed opportunity on the Bret Baier show last night on the Fox News channel. Again, a missed opportunity in my opinion. That's a huge audience, the biggest audience in cable news. There are a lot of independent voters who watch Fox News Channel because they don't like what they see and hear on CNN and MSNBC. And her plan was to answer all of Bret's questions by attacking Donald Trump, which is not going to change the mind of any Trump supporters, and probably doesn't appeal to the independent voters who are looking for her to have an actual plan and tell us what she would do as president.
Well, my favorite part of the Bret Baier interview was when she looks at Bret Baier and says, "You know what I'm talking about."
No,
And he looks her
actually, I
dead in the eye and
don't.
goes, I really don't, man. I mean, it's because she lives in some other alternate universe where she thinks everyone understands and has the same priorities as her. No one does. I can't think of a single person in my life, and I'm friends with Republicans and Democrats and people of all walks of life. I can't think of anyone who values the things she values. She values power and the expansion of the federal government in our lives, despite what she says. Quite frankly, there is no vision. There's nothing from her. Here's what I thought, and this was I was really worried about, and this is a take I don't know if you've heard yet, Scott. Before this, I was really worried that Fox News was going to be soft on her, so that way they could come back and they could get her to agree to do a debate of some sort, and that they would really box the Trump campaign into accepting something like that. And she did this to herself. Like, Bret Baier is a tough interview, but he can be pushed around a little bit, in my opinion. And for her to not have answers to any of those questions, none of those are difficult questions, were they, Scott? I mean, that's basic stuff.
Anybody could have anticipated those questions, you would think.
Right. So she can't go 20 minutes with Bret Baier. How is she expected to go, 20 minutes with Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping or literally anybody, the leaders in Iran who are hacking the Trump campaign? They want her to be elected. I mean, this is such a huge red flag. Whoever decided this was a good idea for her should be fired. I would expect this would be like the 10th campaign reboot for Kamala Harris after this. It was that bad.
I think my favorite spin on the interview last night with Bret Baier has to be that she showed toughness walking into an adversarial environment to answer questions, and that Donald Trump would never do something like that. Well, I'm going to have to throw the BS flag on that, because every time Donald Trump takes a question from a reporter, it's adversarial, and he's taking questions on the campaign trail daily.
Well, and he's done Bret Baier, and the Bret Baier interview, if you go back and look at his last interview with Bret Baier, he interrupted Trump 20-plus times, but he didn't huff and puff and have his advisors wave him out early, which is just an insane thing. As someone who staffed many of those interviews, that is insane. That means you know exactly how poorly this is going. What I loved was, and I think you're right, like Brian Stelter, potato head in chief over at CNN, afterwards talked about how she was speaking in Google terms and that people on Fox News are so uninformed. People who listen to conservative news are so wildly uninformed, Scott, that she was just hoping someone Googles some of the things she talks about. Like, talk about condescending, dude. Like, I'm convinced she didn't want to win.
If I'm going to use Google during that interview, it's going to be Google Translate. I got to remember that line. I got to put that out on Twitter later. Kaelan Dorr here on the Scott Sands Show. Find him on Twitter, on X, at KDORR_USA. Kaelan, just real quick, how much validity are you giving the polls that we're seeing that show Donald Trump taking the lead in all these swing states?
I think I've told you this off air. I did 2016. I did 2020. I feel better about his chances this cycle than I did at any point during the previous two. I think there's a lot of validity to this. Remember, he underperforms in polling because, unfortunately, the way the less rhetoric makes us feel. If a stranger's calling my house, I'm not necessarily always answering that question honestly. So I know that there are many people like that, and that the numbers are probably a lot higher than we're looking. The early returns are great. Everything's great. Everything's in a good place. So, again, it's just about making sure you're negating any points she puts on the board.
Less than 20 days. Early voting underway now here in Ohio and Michigan. Get out to vote, whether you do it early voting or whether you wait till Election Day. Make sure your voice is heard. Kaelan Dorr on the Scott Sands Show. Kaelan, always great to have your insight.
Great to talk to you, brother. Take care, okay?